Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of my podcast. I'm Caroline Chen, and I'm a rising senior in high school. Today, I had the opportunity to speak with Miss Kelly Sortino, the head of school at Crystal Springs Uplands School. In our conversation, we talk about what it's actually like being the head of school, how she got into educational leadership, how to deal with imposter syndrome and self-confidence, among a variety of different topics, and I can't wait to share what we discussed with you all. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate it. And now, before I get into I don't know, education and stuff like that, I wanted to ask a little bit about you first. So I was wondering, did you know this is what you wanted to do with your life while you were in high school? And how did you get into doing what you do now?
Yeah. I definitely did not know that I wanted or I was going to be a head of school, or that I even wanted to be a head of school. I didn't even know that the role of head of school existed. I grew up in the Midwest. I went to public schools, K through 12. And I think what I realized was that I really love school. I'm very much like Crystal students. I really enjoy the act of going to school, of learning, of being involved, getting involved in tons of things. And so I really love that. But I didn't actually, in my mind, the only way that I could be involved in schools was as a teacher. And although, and when in college, I did get my public school certification to teach, and did like my student teaching. But I realized I was like a fine teacher. I was totally good. I was good enough. But I didn't feel like I was super expert in that way. But what I was always drawn to, even in high school, was leadership. I always felt like I either raised my hand for leadership opportunities or was sort of appointed to take on leadership opportunities. And so I knew I had sort of a natural inclination towards that. And so when I realized that I really enjoyed the environment of schools, but I didn't necessarily want to be a teacher, I learned that there were these things called independent schools, and that there were lots of different things you could do within those schools, not just teaching. And so my first role at Crystal was as the director of college counseling. I had worked at my alma mater in the admission office for a few years, again, sort of getting involved in education right after college, but not totally sure what that would lead me to. And so that was like a great entry point into Crystal. And then from there, I became the head of upper school and then the head of school, which I've been doing for the last 7 years.
That's so cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And also kind of building off of that, when I was doing my research for this conversation, I saw that you worked at Google and some I don't know how to say economic
Yeah, but I was at Boston Consulting Group, which is like a management
yeah,
consulting
that's so weird.
firm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
I was wondering when you did that, what led you to shift into
yeah.
Crystal afterwards?
Yeah, so I did Google in between my first and second year of business school. So after I did student teaching, public school student teaching, and uh, college admission work, I decided that I wanted to go back to graduate school, and I didn't want to just get a master's in education because I felt like I had done a lot of that work already in my undergrad. And I wanted to do something in leadership, and so business school seemed like the right move. Although there weren't a lot of schools out there that really understood that that I wanted to be like a leader in education in an educational organization. But Stanford had this great MBA, Master's in Ed joint degree program. So I was lucky enough to get in there. But when I was there, I think I got influenced by a lot of other of my classmates who were doing cool things in for-profits, and figured okay, before I definitively, give myself over to the nonprofit and education sector, maybe I'll try out a place like Google, which I did intern in at the summer. It was super great. But it just felt very big to me. I felt like I couldn't really make an impact. Then afterwards, I did spend 1 year in management consulting just as a way to really build some more of my quantitative skills, which I had started to learn in business school, but I felt like would be really important for me if I ever became a CEO or leader of a nonprofit or educational organization. And it definitely was a great experience, but also one where I knew pretty quickly my heart wasn't in it. I don't like consulting people on things. I like actually doing and executing. And so it was a classmate of mine, Andrew Davis, who was the director of admission here, who told me about the opening in college counseling, and the rest is history. And it was very fun, actually. During my time when I was the head of upper school, Mr. Davis was the head of middle school. So we actually got to take our MBA training and put it into good practice as division heads together. And then he and I also started the microeconomics and finance class here at Crystal,
Wow.
which was very much based on our Stanford MBA microeconomics and finance classes. So sort of fun that we could do that.
Mhm. Yeah, I really wish I had the opportunity to take that class during. I just like couldn't fit it in my schedule,
It's
but
okay. It's okay. You can take it and trust me. I mean, I love the course, and Miss Maluth, I think, is doing a lot of similar things. She was one of my students back in the day,
oh, really?
so I know, which is super full circle. But I think it's okay if you missed it. You can definitely take it in high school, or I mean, in college, and at the very least, you can go to Stanford MBA and pretty much take the exact same course because we don't tell them, but we stole a lot of the materials from what we learned there.
That's so cool. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I think that definitely kind of embodies the thing we've been doing with the career events with Ask. Like, it's not like a linear thing. It's like,
No.
no. So like when you went into college counseling right after you
Mhm.
graduated, like, so you knew you wanted to do education, but like what was like the switching like for you? Because like switching from education to consulting back, like, did you
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I saw it was interesting when I was brought in to be the director of college counseling. And again, small world, Miss Carlton came in with me. So she was the associate director of college counseling. We started in 2009 together. At that point, Miss Richards, who was the head of school at the time, sort of, indicated to us that college counseling, it wasn't broken, but it had some opportunities for improvement. And it was funny, like I approached it very much like a consulting project. Like I came in and I was like, okay, like what's the problem? Do some like empathy interviews with like students and parents, like what are the pain points in this? And I felt like pretty quickly, like I really structured it like a consulting project where I was able to come in, make some changes. I used, we were using data for the first time in a way we weren't really previously, and sort of measuring the impact of those changes. And we saw really great results. And I don't mean that just in terms of like outcomes, but just in terms of how people felt about the process.
So what,
Um,
wait, sorry to cut you off, but like what specifically was like wrong with it before? And
Yeah, I think they're just, well, the first thing was they had one counselor for 65 students, so
oh
that's a
my
lot. So bringing in two people right away, Miss Carlton and I knew that we could have a much higher touch point with all of the students and their families, and we knew that that automatically was going to be better. But we also just really took the time to get to know students really well, and the College Quest sort of class was something that we helped to really develop and go deeper into. Doing a lot more with like essay review. That was something that wasn't done as much. Again, because the person beforehand had twice as many students. But for us, we were like, okay, if we really know these students very well, we should be able to give really personalized feedback on the essays. We did a huge amount of outreach to colleges to get them to come and visit us, because at the time, Crystal was not really well known. And so we were, like this little school and in the Bay, but we knew we had exceptional students and we wanted colleges to get to know us. So Ms. Carlton and I did a lot of proactive invitation. We also did a lot of college visits ourselves. I think my first summer, I visited something like 35 or 40 colleges within a few
God.
months. Just like I was going up and down the East Coast and the West Coast and just making myself known. But that really paid off because when students were, on a wait list or, we could advocate for our students, I think that really helps. So, yeah, so that first year was just, I think, some low-hanging fruit, but some things that really needed to get changed. And now it's great because, almost 20 years later, I see the college counseling office like really is, I think, a shining gem of the Crystal experience. And I feel really grateful that Miss Carlton and I were the ones to help sort of, make some changes and make it sustainable and usher in that high touch feel, which I think is really important.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so cool. So I guess like a lot of stuff I'm doing right now is
Yeah.
that you and Miss Carlton.
Yes, I want to give full credit to the current CCO. I mean, every iteration of it, and Miss Carlton really, I was only there for 3 years. She really shepherded it over the last 2 decades, but always iterating on it. But I do think we, back in 2009, like we made a lot of changes that I think were net positive for students and families, and ultimately, they've just kept sort of being able to iterate and innovate on that.
Wow, that's so cool. 2009, like one
It's a
year.
long time ago. I was gonna say, were you born yet, Caroline?
I was born in 2008,
There
so
we go. Okay. Well, that puts some things in perspective, doesn't it?
yeah, for sure. And like kind of building off of that, I know you worked as an admissions officer at
Mhm.
Princeton after you graduated
Mhm.
college. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I
And
went.
like you've done so much since then. So I kind of like, have like two parts to this question. Is like, did your work there kind of influence the way you shaped college counseling at Crystal? And like throughout all your educational or like even not non-educational experiences, like how has that shaped your like leadership and like
Yeah.
educational philosophy?
Yeah. I would say there's two ways that those early days really shaped me. The first was in team development. So actually had nothing to do with the actual work of admission, but just, being part of that Princeton admission office. That was my first time like really working full time. And we had this amazing senior associate director of admission who'd been there for a while. His name was Keith Light. He's still one of my mentors till today. He's absolutely wonderful. But he really, there were four of us who were just fresh graduates out of Princeton who were sort of the lowest level admission officers. And he really took us under his wing. He also he had a house in Princeton, and so he would like every once a month like host a game night and sort of have everybody come over with their significant others. And he really helped me to see that if you're going to do a job that requires a lot of work, which reading, thousands of files definitely was, you want people to feel like A, that they are connected to the mission and the purpose of what you're doing, and B, really feel connected to one another. And I think those are two things I've really carried with me at Crystal. Like obviously I try to imbue in all of our PAC members, the sort of adherence to our mission, and that really should be giving us purpose and fulfillment every day. But also try to create like a really great place to work. Oftentimes, where you work, you often spend more time with your colleagues than you do with your family. When you think about how many hours a week you're spending. I mean, same for you all students at school. And so, you can make that a really wonderful experience or a not really wonderful experience. And I think I've really chosen to do what I can to make sure that people really like coming to work every day, that it's not just an obligation and a way to get a paycheck, but really like you would choose to do this one way or another. And I really credit Keith Light to being the person who helped me see that a job, could be more than just a paycheck. It could be a place where you feel like you're part of a community of individuals trying to advance a mission and be better as a whole.
Mhm. I see. Yeah, that's so cool. Because it's so interesting, like through these conversations. Because I talked with Miss Kim a few days ago, and then she was talking about like how like when she was, I think, a principal at another school, she had to like help like build a community for the teachers and like teach them, like view them as students. I think that's how she put it.
Yeah.
So it's like
Oh,
a complete different perspective. Because like, I mean, for me, I just see teachers as teachers, and I've never really viewed it from the other angle before. And yeah, that's super cool. And yeah, thanks for sharing that.
yeah.
And okay, now kind of moving on into like your role at Crystal. So like what does it actually look like being a head of school? Like what's your day-to-day life? And like what are some things that like maybe some students or other people wouldn't know about your role?
Yeah. I think my role, like the head of school role, is a really amorphous role, honestly. Like it's hard for me to describe because on a daily basis, I'm sitting here being like, I know I'm working really hard. Like I know I'm working like a lot of hours and doing important and meaningful work. But sometimes I look up and I'm like, what was my day? Like what can I like really point to be like, here's something that I did. My days are pretty much filled with meetings nonstop. I think you know that, Caroline, as an advisee of mine, you see me like nonstop in meetings. And those are with a variety of people. First and foremost, like the senior leadership team. So everyone on the senior leadership team is one of my direct reports, which means that we meet twice a week as a team where we're focusing on, decision making and higher level sort of problem solving and strategic initiatives. And then I meet with each of them either weekly or biweekly one-on-one. And those are really meetings where, they're updating me on aspects of their role. I'm sort of serving as a thought partner to them. I'm sometimes bringing up things that have come to my attention that we need to work on. But a lot of the times it's there to help hopefully like empower and for them to be able to go do their job, more fully because their jobs for the most part are pretty operational, like making the school run on a day-to-day basis. I also have meetings with the board of trustees. They are my boss. And so whether that's through committee meetings or one-on-one meetings with the board chair, just making sure that we are in lockstep with where we're going as a school. And then like it's everything else, which actually the everything else part of it, like when I'm not in meetings, those are actually my most enjoyable parts of my day, whether that's being an advisor or going to an assembly, or hopefully if I can, like stopping by a class and observing a teacher in action, going after school to, see a play practice or a sports event. But really just trying to be part of the life of the school and then make sure that my decision making is always bettering the life of the school. I always say that as a head of school, I believe there's just one question that should always be guiding what you're doing, and that's what's in the best interest of students. That's first and foremost, like what my job is to always make sure that I've got the students' best interest in mind. I know sometimes students don't think that what we're doing is in their best interest, but I promise it is, and there might be different takes on what is in a student's best interest. Like tests, for example, might be a point of disagreement, but and then and second, and then beyond that, it's really making sure I'm taking care of the pack because they are the ones who are on the front lines delivering the student experience, through the classroom, through coaching, through advising, and so making sure that I'm making decisions about compensation, benefits, the work environment. Going back to that earlier point of like really trying to make a team environment where people feel like they can bring their best selves to work. That's what I'm doing as well. But yeah, it's like I said, my job, it's what I really love my job because no 2 days are the same. I like that there's the sort of cyclical nature of the school year where I'm like, okay, like it's August, it's the start of the school, like I know what to expect, but every school year is different because there's new individuals, there's new sort of macro, trends, whether that's AI or COVID or whatever it might be. And so it always makes it a new and interesting challenge, even though the environment is somewhat similar, the people are somewhat similar. And that's what I don't know. That's why I really love my job. Is like each day is a new challenge and new things that come my way, and that keeps it fun and interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really interesting as like a perspective. And I was wondering because I know, like personally, I always see you like because I'm always by the backfield for my classes, and then you're just like sitting there, like, and there's people going in and out of your office, and like
Yep.
I was wondering like if you have meetings so often, like, is it just like natural for you, or like how do you keep yourself going and like present for every single one? Because
Yeah, it's a lot, and sometimes I have to remind myself, like I haven't gone to the bathroom yet, like, and it's like 2 o'clock, or like I haven't had anything to eat yet. I need to go grab something to eat. It is like I mean, yeah, being the head of school or being in meetings on day is definitely an endurance sport. But I think what keeps it interesting for me is like it's I'm seldom in a meeting with the same person for 3 hours. It's like 1 hour meetings here and there. And so the topics are constantly changing. I mean, if anything, it's like this, I feel like I'm in a very similar nature to you all going to class. Like I'm in a class, if you will, for 1 hour, about maybe it's with our CFOO. So it's like maybe it's more quant heavy, right? And finance related, or regarding HR, personnel issues, whatever it is. And then I switch and I'm meeting with, Miss Kim about like athletics and fine arts and all that. So it does actually like the topics at hand are super interesting and are very different talking from person to person. So I don't get bored ever. But sometimes like if I've been pushing 10 or 12 hours of the day, like especially if there's like an event later at night, I might need a Diet Coke or something just to. just to get me a little bit of caffeine to push me through to the end.
Yeah. Well, that's honestly really crazy. Like personally, I don't know if I could sit through meeting after meeting after meeting and
I
like
mean, but you all really do. Like, I mean, you all have 7 to 8 hour days anyway, just in classes. So it really isn't that different. Except maybe you get some forced breaks that I should probably be better about putting
like
in
you
my
need to
own
be like
schedule.
focused and like interact like in class sometimes I can just like zone
That's
out
true.
a little bit like
That's true.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. But sometimes it's good for me to like not, I actually have to really challenge myself sometimes to like not talk. And so it is good to sort of just let other, especially in group meetings, like realize that my voice, I should decenter my voice in that meeting. So not that I'm not paying attention to it, but maybe I don't have to be as engaged as if I'm like leading the meeting.
Mhm.
So
Sure. And I was kind of wondering because you've been head of school since COVID and
mhm.
like well like speaking of like the whole meetings, do you think it like the whole like process of like doing the work you do right now got easier as time went on or like what was it like? Because I know was COVID the year after you became head of school?
Yeah, so I started as head in 2019. So I had sort of 6 months on the job before COVID hit.
And
Uh,
what was that like? Wow.
yeah, it's so funny because COVID definitely was a challenge. It was a challenge for everybody, but it was also really exciting. If I have to be, I mean, it was a terrible, terrible, obviously, like pandemic and nothing I would ever wish for again. But the reason it was exciting for me was it was something like no one had ever had to navigate this before. And I mean that both at Crystal, but also globally. Or I guess they did back in like whatever, when there was like global influenza in the 1920s, whatever it was. But like we had it in recent history, in recent sort of modern schooling had to do this. And so I think what was exciting for me is when I started in 2019, like many people in leadership positions, but especially because I was internally, I'd gone through a search process, but I was internally sort of appointed. I had imposter syndrome. Like I wasn't sure if I was really the best choice for Crystal. Like, did they choose me just because maybe a few people liked me? Like, could I actually do this job? And my challenges before, in 2019, before COVID, were really about everybody who I'd been peers with now was my direct report and having to sort of reestablish that reporting structure and sort of that. I also had been working for our head of school for a decade. And I think a lot of people, because I worked for her and with her, just made presumptions that I was going to be just like her in my leadership. And so I had to constantly be reminding people like, no, I'm a different person. I actually, even though like I went along with some decisions and all of that. Like I actually have a different ideas for the school. So the bigger challenge for me, like I mean, COVID was a big challenge, but originally it was just like really getting myself confident in my own leadership and getting the school community confident in what I could do. And that's where I think COVID was a benefit to me because it allowed everybody to see how I led in a really authentic way and in a way that like there wasn't a blueprint for, there wasn't a prototype for, before I started. And what was really exciting for me too is that even heads of school who had 20 years of experience on me, all of us were dealing with the exact same situation and we were all brand new at it. And I got a lot of confidence because well, first off, again, I focused on what's in the best interest of students. And for me, really early on, it was like, how do we get students back on campus? Students who can and want to be back on campus as soon as possible. Like that was my driving thing. Like we've got to, as soon as San Mateo County lets 6 through 12 schools be in person, we've got to figure that out. And so that really drove me. I also wanted to make sure that faculty and staff, that PAC could really, again, for those who wanted and could be here in person, could, but that for those who couldn't, that we could figure out arrangements because it was obviously a really scary time for a lot of people. But I do think those, I mean, I think Crystal, we navigated the pandemic very, very well.
I
I think
agree.
a lot of people look to us as a school that did a lot of things right. And in that, like I gained a lot of confidence in my own abilities as a leader. I also my team, like we just worked so like the senior leadership team, we just had to work so closely together during that time. We just became really, really tight, and those are bonds that I will always cherish and always be incredibly grateful for.
Mhm. Yeah, that's Super cool. And thank you for sharing that. And like, I know when you were talking about like first stepping into the role of head of school, you dealt with, you said imposter syndrome and
Sure.
kind of just like lack of confidence. And I feel like personally, I definitely identify with that a lot, even now. And I feel like a lot of other students probably do so as well. And I was wondering, like, I know you said COVID helped you get confidence, but is imposter syndrome something you like how did you get over it if that's even a thing and like what like strategies or like how
Yeah.
you did that.
I mean, it sounds silly, but like positive self-talk really does go a long way. And I did have to remind myself, and I think again, I was able to prove it. It was proven both through myself, like having positive self-talk to be like, Kelly, you are the right leader at this time, like to do this, like you're doing the right things, like building myself up. But also I was getting a lot of external validation, and not only from Crystal community members, but from like other heads of school. I had people, again, experienced heads like calling me, asking me, how are you doing this? Like I saw that you put out this communication, like holy cow, like can I borrow these things? And I recognize like people were coming to me as like an expert or as someone who was very thoughtful and organized and about this process. And so I realized like, okay, I do have things to offer, not only my own community, but other communities beyond Crystal. And I think both things, like the positive self-talk and the external validation together, really did help me to see like, okay, like I'm a decent head of school. I might not have the most experience, but I have really good instinct. I have, and again, the thing that was really helping me being a new head of school was that I'd been at Crystal for 10 years prior. So I really deeply knew this community. And that's where, again, I think I really felt for new heads who were coming into new communities. Like, I don't know how I would have been able to do that. Like, trying to figure out, like, A, where the bathrooms are and what people's names are, and then also be like, oh, are we going to like, require people to wear masks, and are we going to be back here in person, like without knowing the dynamics of the community. I just felt like I had built up a lot of goodwill over those 10 years, and in some ways like I was willing to cash it all in during the pandemic to be like, I want to see kids back on campus, so if this means that people are going to maybe not love me right now, that's okay. Like I'm willing to take that, because I think in the end this is still the right move, and this is going to be in the best interest of students and adults alike. And I
Yeah.
think and I think I was right. I think that was the right move.
Yeah, and like I came into Crystal in sixth grade, which was the year COVID hit. So like it
Right.
was on Zoom. And like I don't know, like it definitely affected it because like my parents didn't give me a phone. I didn't know everyone else had phones. Like I had no contact with anyone. But like once we got back to campus so fast, it really like sped up my process of adjustment, even though it was like kind of rough as a sixth grader going into middle
I know.
school.
I wish we could have gotten you all in right away. But yeah, I think yeah, we did it as quickly as we
Yeah.
could, and that San Mateo would allow us.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
and I think I had a pretty smooth
I'm
transition.
happy to hear that. Yeah, it's amazing to think that you all, that the class of 2027, you all are that first class that really, started pandemic. That after you all, like that people won't have a crystal connection necessarily to the pandemic, which is
Yeah. Mhm.
wild.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Because the seniors are we're the last one. That's crazy.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, thanks for sharing about like the whole like confidence thing. Because like when I look at you, I see like, oh my God, like you're so confident. You're a great public speaker. You like do everything so confidently. And like it's just like hard to think of you as someone who has dealt with stuff like this before.
A
So
lot. Yeah, a lot. And I would also say, like, even when you see me out there, like, portraying confidence, like a lot of it's faking it till I make it. Like I know that my job as head of school, like that if I show up to like call it an assembly and look shaky and look like I'm not confident in what I'm saying, then that's not that's not going to be great for the community. So I do know that I grew up on the stage, acting and singing and dancing, and so I do know that sometimes you just have to turn it on, even if like internally you're not fully confident about it. You're like, no, this is my moment to like be the head of school that people need, even if internally I'm still having some self-doubt. And I will say, like, I honestly think I suspect I will always have self-doubt, and I actually think if you're a great leader, you always will. Because I think if you ever crest over into that place where you're like, I'm the best, like that's where hubris is going to bite you in the behind, and you're going to be taken down a few pegs. And so I think it's a good thing to be grateful, be grounded, but also have a little bit of self-doubt that can be motivating for you. And also to be able to do that positive self-talk and get the reinforcement that you need to know that you are the leader you're supposed to be.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's super powerful. And I definitely identify with like just like needing to like suck it up and do it. Like no matter how much I hate, like send like tell them what to do, like tell
That's
them
right.
not
That's
to do
right.
that. Like
That's
you
part
know,
of it.
it's definitely an exercise and like also like it's kind of like learning to like not let other people get to you is also something personally I've learned. Like it's kind of like at first it's like someone would say something that would take like you could tell and then I'd spend like hours thinking like oh my God like what do I do, why are they saying that, but then now it's just like oh yeah, like they do that and it's like I feel like that form of confidence or like I don't know if that's confidence but like
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think one of the things that I think I've learned over time, like, if I'm thinking back to my high school self as a leader versus now, is like, I really did care a lot about what people thought and said about me, as a leader, but just as a person, right? And that's, I mean,
yeah.
that's developmentally appropriate. That's what being a teenager is all about. But I think where I have really grown, and I think I saw it most probably like accelerated most for me moving into the head of upper school role at Crystal because I just realized in that role, um, I was going to be disappointing people a lot. Like in the director of college counseling role, like people would be disappointed, but it wasn't my fault, right? Like I could get them as far as I could in the college counseling, and then ultimately I was like, well, it's not my decision whether this college, admits you. So people would be frustrated, but I never took it personally. It usually wasn't at me
Mhm.
in when you're doling out discipline, when you're making broader policy decisions, which I was as division head and now as a head of school, there are people who are going to vehemently disagree with me and be very disappointed in the decisions I make and how it might impact them. And they'll say things that are like really directed at me. And I think just over time, I've really learned to like build up a thicker skin and realize like, that's more with that person than it is like, that's more about that person than it is about me. If at the end of the day, I feel confident in the decision I made, if I feel like I was able to, convey that in an empathetic but clear way, um, I really don't have a problem sleeping at night in a way that I used to. Like it would really like keep me up
Mhm.
and it would really gnaw at me. And now I'm just able to sort of move on a lot more easily. But I think that takes time. It's almost like you have to build up those muscles and build up that experience over time. And you just have these other moments where you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Like 5 years ago, I had a really hard, parent conversation. Like this one didn't even crack into the top 10. So that is the other thing with experience that you get more perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And what was I gonna say? Yeah, and also like kind of building off of that, it's like kind of drawing the line because I know it's like good to be reflective, but like at what point do you just have to be like I know what I'm doing. Like
That's
I'm
right.
not gonna need to like worry about what they're thinking. It's like, and I know we're going a bit over time. Is it
That's
okay
okay.
if I
No,
just
we're okay. Yeah,
one
yeah, yeah.
final quick? I'm
Yeah, all
sorry.
great. All great. You're doing
Um,
great.
yeah, and I think it's kind of just like figuring out the line between like being reflective and like being too self-criticizing. Like that's honestly a harder thing to do than like sucking it up and doing it because it's kind of like
Great.
because it's less of like in the moment because like in the moment whether it be like you're telling someone what to do or like saying no to someone you're just like doing it but then it's just like the process after like replaying that moment and being like did I handle it the best way, like maybe I shouldn't have said that or like something like that, and it's
Yeah.
kind of thinking like was it actually there, like should I have done that or like maybe next time how could I handle like stuff like that.
I think the best thing we can always do is instead of like, yeah, replaying it, really focusing it on the future, right? Like, okay, so yeah, it didn't go as great as I wanted, but like next time, what am I going to do differently to make sure that I feel better and maybe the other person feels better? And I think if we can always use these as learning moments and moments for growth, then we're doing okay.
And another thing is, I think we talked about this at the beginning of the school year, but when it comes to like discussing with people who I think aren't always like directly as nice to you, or like you can see there's something wrong, like it's kind of like putting yourself in their shoes and being like, because I think the way you like train your mindset to think directly correlates to how you act. It's like if you can convince yourself to think like, oh, their feelings are valid, like just like show empathy, like
Right.
genuine empathy, it kind of does like help you like
Absolutely.
translates into your actions as well. Because it's like if you're being like fake, it's like, oh, I'm not gonna react, but I hate that. It's like you're still gonna
Yeah.
the way you view them definitely change
Totally.
a lot.
Totally right.
Yeah.
Totally right.
And yeah, again, sorry about going over time, but I just had one final really
Yeah.
quick question for you. So, I was wondering if you could tell like your high school self today, or like, yeah, your high school self today, sorry, like, do you have, what would you say? And do you have any specific advice as someone with so much experience with leadership, like for current student leaders trying to make like a positive impact? I know you touched on that a bit already.
Yeah. Um, so my advice, I mean, this is going to sound somewhat silly, but it is very true, which is just like, don't forget to have fun. Like while you're being a leader, while you're doing all the things. I think in high school, I was so focus. I really relate to Crystal students. This is probably why I love being in the Crystal environment because I think I was a Crystal student myself. Like I love my studies. I love getting involved. I love leading. And so I see myself in people like you, Caroline, but also like in lots of other Crystal students. I see how driven you are, how hardworking. And those are all good things, but sometimes I feel like we're like, we're manufacturing these like not kids, but like full-on adults who like like are taking things a little too seriously and like trying to do these like huge things at the age of 17, 18, which is awesome. And I definitely was ambitious and was like that as well. And I also realized like high school and just adolescence in general is such a precious time. Like you don't get this time back. And I think if you're so focused on like being an adult leader or, whatever it might be, you forget like just to have fun and like to really soak in the experience and to be a little irreverent here and there and do things that are going to be like maybe not something you're going to put on your resume, but it's going to be something that you remember for the rest of your life because it was like a silly night out with some friends or whatever it is. And I say that now just because, now that I'm decidedly middle age and like definitely like in the midst of my career, I think it's harder to do that. And I still really try to find these moments. I mean, this is what I love. Like I make sure that for every one of my senior leadership team meetings, we always do a warm up. And usually it's like a silly warm up and something fun and that makes us laugh because like I think you need to like still have that irreverence like in your life. Because the work that we do like oftentimes is very serious and has serious impacts but I just never want to take myself too seriously and I think again when I like look back at myself as a 16, 17-year-old like I was a pretty serious like I was like I was a 16-year-old like in a 46-year-old like I was in a 46-year-old soul in like a 16-year-old body and now that I'm that age I'm like okay like I didn't have to be that like I could have just broken a couple rules here and there and like life would have been okay so yeah I don't know. Maybe that's not the best advice for student leaders, but I think I see a lot of myself in students and I see how much you all are trying to do and it's truly impressive. Like I said, like sitting in at the Academic Student Council final meeting of the year, like the entire senior leadership team, we were just so blown away because we were like, how are these students? Like these slides are so impeccable, like
Like
their
I'm really
takeaways are so good, like even just like the segues from like one person to another, like everyone knew their
I
topic.
was like you could probably tell, but at the beginning I was so nervous because we had never run the thing before. That was our very first time doing the entire
But I
thing.
mean, you all showed up and it was, like I said, it was incredible. So I'm holding that because I'm like, I want to see that. Like that potential is so, like amazing. And I'm like, and I want to make sure you guys are also having fun, like that you can have both. So that would be my advice. And I think advice that I'm like still giving myself, like giving myself permission to not work so hard, to like really recognize that I'm a role model to other people. So, making sure people see that even if I'm in meetings all the time, that I do need to stop and go get lunch. I need to go talk to people. I need to go sit outside. And I don't think I'm doing as great of a job as I'd like to in that, but something that I can grow in, and hopefully maybe other students can as well.
Yeah, for sure. That I think that's super important what you just said, especially with like I don't know, like my grade who's like literally going into college apps. And I don't know. Okay, I went pottery painting with a friend earlier today, and we were like having a really similar conversation. And we were talking about how like I know like we knew senior year, like first semester was gonna be crazy and like
Yeah.
stressful, but we were saying how like we wanted to enjoy it because like senior sunrise, like all
Yeah.
that's gonna be so fun. But also like the amount we enjoy it really kind of just, or like the amount of stress we feel even really just directly correlates to the people we surround ourselves with.
Yeah.
Because like if I choose to like just talk to people who are always like, oh, I got into this college, like what's on your resume? And like just constantly like talking about those topics, like
Yep.
bragging about themselves. It's like that just impacts your ability to have fun and like your ability to allow yourself to have fun so much more. And I think kind of like making those choices, it's like, oh, like this person's always acting like this, and that's actually really bad for me, like spending
Yeah.
that. And it's like stuff like that. Sorry, I'm going a bit off topic, but like,
No, 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 you're not at all. But I hear you. And I think felt like stress was something that was out of my control. Like it was like around me and I had to be stressed or whatever it was. And it's not like it's completely within our control. Like we get to determine how stressed we want to be, how hard we want to work, how much fun we want to have. Like it's completely within our agency. And so, that means that like to your point, like if you make healthy choices, you're gonna have healthy outcomes. And I think yeah, I think that's important. So I love that you and your friend were first off that you were pottery painting, how fun, and
my first,
that you were talking about these things. That's great.
yeah. And I think that kind of ties in. Sorry, I'm going even more off
It's great.
topic to like, but like to like work Ask is trying to do next year because like one of, I guess junior, like one of them pitched to me the idea of starting a mental health committee, and like I actually when I was talking to Miss Carlton when she was doing her like open house lunch and learn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like we had like a really good conversation about like academic pressure and what really channels that because I think personally I have a lot of experience being in many different environments with varying degrees of academic pressure that were normalized. And we talked about how much like what is acceptable or like things that are just like things like I don't know, like bragging about like, oh, I'm like get doing this internship and I'm like I'm
Mhm.
taking 14 APs. It's like stuff like that like I don't know, like some high schoolers like to post on LinkedIn. I like try to stay off that because I know it's very like it affects people.
Mhm.
You compare yourselves naturally, but it's just like stuff like that that's acceptable really shapes the way like the amount of academic pressure there is because if like back to your point, if high schoolers allow themselves to just have fun and like enjoy life rather than constantly like worrying about like, oh, I'm falling behind, my peers are doing like stuff like that. And
Totally.
that's kind of what led to like us wanting to do this work next year and like
Love
wanting
it.
to Crystal,
Yeah.
trying to like help Crystal in that regard. So
It's great. I think
that's
it's yeah, happy to help on that front however we can because I think it is something where we all benefit if we can unlock it together.
And I think personally that's like something I'm actually really interested in working on because I know I went through some mental health stuff at the beginning of this year for like, I don't know, like 4 months. So it was like kind of crazy how fast those 4 months went by. But
Mhm.
it's kind of like during that time when like you absolutely feel no self-worth and then you see like it's not like sometimes it's like random people online, sometimes it's even Crystal students like posting on like social media like oh, I'm taking so many APs. I started this like I had this amazing internship. I started this huge nonprofit. And it's like stuff like that. I think the like little hit of dopamine they get from bragging about their accomplishment, like you don't know like how much it can affect someone else and like how much deeper
Mm.
like you never know who's on the other side of the screen. It's just stuff like that that I think is really important to remind students about like really like the impact of bragging and the impact of like setting a competitive like stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I just went really off
No,
topic.
I love it. I love no, you're teeing up what Ask will be maybe tackling next year. I love it.
Yeah. Amongst a lot of other things.
I know, I know. You all have a lot on your plate. It's
Yeah, I'm
exciting.
I'm excited. Yeah. And I'm working with new people and I'm sure
Yeah,
gonna be more stuff happening. So yeah. Okay, sorry for that tangent, but
great. It was great, Caroline.
Yeah, I really appreciate you making. Okay, so I hope you all enjoyed my conversation with Miss Sortino. A huge thank you to Miss Sortino for taking the time to speak with me, and thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you all next time.